Throughout the Second World War, Britain suffered heavily from bombing raids, and the threat of invasion was a constant worry for the population. But their king was a constant source of inspiration and was a very popular monarch. George VI was seen as a monarch who had shared the hardships of much of his population. He was a man who suffered with a stammer, and he never should have been king, neither did he want to be. It was after the abdication of his brother, Edward VIII, that George VI became the monarch, and he was seen as an unassuming man. However, in 1952, at just the age of 56, there was a significant degree of shock, as on the 6th of February, the king passed away. Only 7 years after his greatest victory, the nation were left without their Hitler-defeating king. But what is the story of George's passing? Join us today as we look at the painful death of King George VI, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Following the abdication of his brother, George VI, who was also known as Bertie, became the reluctant king. He was born with the name Albert, and many across the country believed that he would be physically and psychologically incapable of ruling strongly over the nation, and this gossip did spread across the country. But he would prove his dissenters wrong. His coronation took place on the 12th of May 1937, which was the day that Edward VIII was intended to be crowned, but at the time things in Europe were beginning to look rather dire. Nazism was spreading across Germany, and Hitler had seized control, and to many it seemed obvious that a dictator of Germany would begin a war as he sought to take more land. Initially, the Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain would favour a policy of appeasing Hitler, granting him some territorial gain to keep him quiet, but this was unpopular. George VI went on a tour in 1939 of Canada and America, and it was intended that the visit would be an enthusiastic visit, bonding the two nations and Britain, and with the likelihood of war coming on the horizon, it was seen as a popular thing. At this time, the King and his Queen Elizabeth formed a strong friendship with the President of America Roosevelt. But as the Second World War broke out in September 1939, the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth declared war on Nazi Germany. The King, who suffered with a stammer, would make a number of key radio broadcasts, and this would be seen as a defiant symbol against Hitler and hatred. He refused to flee the country during the conflict and would spend most of his time in Buckingham Palace, as well as staying in Windsor Castle in the evening. As the Blitz came to the country, with the German Luftwaffe carrying out bombing raids, the King and Queen almost were hit when 2 German bombs exploded in the courtyard at Buckingham Palace whilst they were there. The Queen said, "I'm glad we've been bombed. It makes me feel like we can look the East End in the face." The royal family were living along with the people who were suffering, and they lived in line with rationing. George's brother was also killed on active service, but when Winston Churchill became Prime Minister, the pair would form a close personal relationship, and every Tuesday, for 4.5 years, the pair would meet for lunch to discuss the war effort in secrecy and honesty. The King would regularly during the conflict visit the soldiers, and would visit bomb sites inside of England, paying his respects, and also would be seen near the front line. His visits on ships to sailors and other aspects of the military were seen as a great morale boost for the men. In December 1939, he visited the military in France across the English Channel, and then went on during the conflict to visit places such as North Africa, Malta, Normandy and southern Italy. His visits were seen as the embodiment of determination, and his good nature and positivity was captured in newsreels and shown back home. When the war was won, the huge scenes in London on VE Day were a spectacle which have gone down in history as some of the most joyous. The crowds would shout for their king, crying, "We want the king," and the king along with Winston Churchill appeared on the balcony, and the crowd went wild. King George would also see much of the dissolution of the British Empire, and he would continue to go on different visits around the world. However, it was clear that the Second World War had caused a significant amount of stress, which impacted the health of King George VI. He was also a very heavy smoker, and because of this developed lung cancer, and also the walls of his arteries thickened. The king suffered with a blockage in his arteries in his right leg, and because of this had to cancel a tour to Australia and New Zealand, and he could have lost his leg, but was treated in March 1949. As his health became worse and deteriorated, his daughter Elizabeth, our current queen, began to take on more responsibilities alongside her husband Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. In May 1951, George VI was well enough to attend the Festival of Britain. However, weeks later it was announced that the king would need 4 weeks of rest and relaxation. It was clear that the king was ill, and on the 23rd of September 1951, he had a surgery which removed his left lung as a tumour had been found. He would never fully recover from this operation. The following month his daughter would complete a long tour of Canada, and then at the state opening of Parliament in November 1951, the King's speech was read for him by the Lord Chancellor, Lord Symonds. The traditional Christmas broadcast was spoken by George, but as he was weak, it was recorded in different sections and was then edited together. The final time that King George VI would be seen in public was when he defied the advice of his doctors and family, when he went to London Airport to see off his daughter Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip on their tour to Australia. They would go via Kenya, but this was the last time that she would see her father alive. 6 days later, inside of Sandringham House in Norfolk, at 7:30 AM on the 6th of February 1952, King George VI was found dead in his bed. In the night he had died from coronary thrombosis, and that a blood clot had stopped his heart. Princess Elizabeth was told of her father's death by her husband, and she spent an hour alone before she flew back to be with her family and arrived as Queen Elizabeth II. Following George's death, the coffin was laid to rest for 2 days in St Mary Magdalene's Church at Sandringham, and then lay in state at Westminster Hall. His funeral was a huge spectacle that took place at St George's Chapel in Windsor, and there was a huge amount of public mourning for their beloved king. Ultimately, it was the stress of war and also the fact that King George VI was a heavy smoker that made his health deteriorate. He died at the age of 56, which was considered very young for a man who had the best healthcare in the country. He would never recover from his lung operation and was plagued with smoking-related health problems in the final years of his reign. He was a king beloved by his nation. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.